Welcome back to Prompt Circle, where we discuss use cases for AI and how you can implement them in everyday life. In today's video, we'll be looking at how you can create your own ChatGPT app on Slack in the most simplified way possible. Before we jump into the code, let's take a look at how the app actually works. And we can take a look at some of the conversations so far between the ChatGPT Slack app that has already been built, along with some of the questions that I have. But let's go ahead and test it out and ask a few questions. Now we'll be testing this on context, ensuring that it remembers the conversations that we've had so that it is actually having that feel of a chatbot. So let's start by asking it, please, can you explain to me how to build a Slack app? All right, and we can say provide a step-by-step guide as an example. So now I send the message. And then we can expect ChatGPT to go ahead and return a response. So in this case, we can see the response coming true. All right, so we have a response here. Sure, here's a step-by-step guide on building a Slack app. Create a Slack app, log into the Slack API, and so on and so forth. So we can see that it returned like those steps. Now let's just test for its memory by asking it about one random step. So let's say explain the third step in more detail. All right, so it's going ahead, it's processing as we speak, and we're going to see that the third step in building a Slack app is to develop the app's features and functionality, So this is exactly what I was looking for. A chatbot that is able to have the conversational context, which is what we can see here with this particular app. So let's jump in to see exactly how to build this out. So here's what we're going to be doing today. We'll be setting up a Slack app. Then we'll be using a package called LangChain to build out the chatbot function. They've done such a tremendous job of really simplifying the development of a chatbot that is built on a large language model like GPT. More on that in a bit. And then we will also create a function that handles each message that is received by the Slack bot. And then we get to see it in action again. We go to api.slack.com/apps. Then we go ahead and create a new app. We want to go ahead and create this app from scratch. We want to give it a name. So in this case, we can call it ChatGPT Slack app. Then you want to pick a workspace. So in this case, I'm picking my workspace here, and I want to go ahead and create the app. Once the app is created, then you have to generate some of the tokens that you're going to be using. So we're going to be needing two tokens. We need the bot token. Now this token can be gotten from your OAuth and permissions, but first you need to add some scopes before you can get your token. To do that, go down to scopes, add an OAuth scope. In this case, we're going to be needing the chat write scope. We also need the chat write public so that you can respond in channels it's not a part of. So those two would be the main scopes that we need here. And once we have these scopes, now we can go ahead and reinstall the app into our workspace. Once we're done with that, we need a few more things. Please ensure to copy this bot token and keep it safe because you're going to be using it moving forward. So the next thing we want to go ahead and generate is an app token. We need an app token because we're going to be operating in socket mode. So go ahead to basic information, go to app level tokens, generate a token. In this case, we're just going to call it app token. And we need a scope connections right. That's all we need for our WebSocket approach so that it is in socket mode. So go ahead and generate that. Again, copy this particular token because you're going to be using it in the app. Now, the other things that we need to do is to go ahead and turn on socket mode. So right here, go to socket mode. turn on socket mode, and this would allow us to develop locally without any issues. You could also choose to develop with ngrok if you prefer that as well. So the last thing we're going to be doing here is to ensure that our app is able to receive events. So we'll go ahead and turn on interactivity. So it's actually done for us automatically. So because we're now in socket mode, so we don't have any configurations to do there, which is fine. But also I would like for us to also add an event subscription that listens for when ChatGPT is mentioned. So I go ahead and turn on events, and I'm going to subscribe to a few bot events here. So the first one is going to be app mention. We might need that. We also might need IM message, so that whenever a message is posted in a direct message channel, we can get that information. And once we're done with that, that should be fine. We can go ahead and save changes. And once you change any scopes, you need to reinstall the app. So go ahead and click on reinstall app so that you can have the app reinstalled again. So I go ahead and hit allow, and now the app is ready for use. All right, next up, we need access to OpenAI, and we need an OpenAI API key. So we go to the API keys and generate a new key, or use an existing one if you already have that. All right, now to our dev setup. So there are a few things that you're going to be setting up here. First, you want to create a folder for this project. You want to cd into that project. Now, because we're using Python here, it's always advisable to use a virtual environment, and you can use that virtual environment setup to do that. Also, you're going to be needing 3 key environment variables. One, the Slack app token, the Slackbot token, and then your OpenAI API token. So that's all you're going to be needing here. So you need to add that as your environment variables before we get started. Next up, we need to install some packages. So we need to install our Slackbot package, our OpenAI package, and finally, we need to install LangChain. Now, LangChain is a library that essentially helps in developing large language model driven applications. It gives you access to a variety of models and allows you to also chain those models together. This is truly special and game-changing if you are building any application that is powered by these large language models. I'll talk a little bit about them in a moment. Now, I came across LangChain while watching one of the AI YouTube videos from Alan Thompson, and I was truly amazed at what it can actually do. And from what I could see, this is a library that is essentially designed to abstract a lot of the heavy lifting around working with multiple language models at the same time. Now, as the description says, it mentions that most times you are actually requiring more than one language model whenever you're building an app, which is completely true. And each language model probably provides different types of capabilities. Some are really good at summarization, while others are good at generation, and so on and so forth. So what LangChain allows you to do is to combine all of them while building your apps, and also kind of standardize the way that you use these language models. So they have some modules here that I'll talk about very, very briefly. I plan on going and doing a very deep dive into LangChain, because this is really an awesome tool, developed by Harrison Chase. Really awesome job he has done here, because I think this is going to be truly transformational for anyone who's building on these models. So let's go through some of the modules here. There's the prompt management tool, which provides an interface for you to create prompt templates for you to actually manage your prompts easily. They also provide an interface for interacting with large language models like OpenAI's GPT, making it really easy for you to manage the output and things of that nature. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting. They also provide tools that allow you to interact with things like embeddings, as well as things like requests if you want to interact with external data on the internet. You can also do search engines, so many different things that they've added here, which is pretty awesome. And also, The really cool thing here is the chains, which allows you to use one single call and sequence them in a way that you can use multiple capabilities. For our chatbot, we need two types of models. We needed one language model, OpenAI GPT, and we needed a way to save conversational history and manage that much more easily. And that is something that LangChain provides us as well. They also provides an agent which allows you to make decisions about how each model is actually going to be used and which task and when the task is going to be used, as well as memory, which allows you to hold information that can be used very easily, especially when you're doing things like chatbots. They have an extensive documentation. I would say please take the time to go in and look at some of the things that they have. I looked at some of their use cases, really awesome use cases. I wish I had seen this before I did my summarization video as well, because I feel like this is a more elegant approach to summarization. And they also have, like I said, really great documentation. So take some time to go look at what has been built out here. They also have a very active Discord channel which you can join to get more information. We're going to be using some of the modules from LangChain here, and in fact they've actually provided an entire step-by-step guide of how to build this. And this means that we don't really need to do a lot. Of course, you can always modify your prompts if you want something specific, but just to illustrate the concept of building ChatGPT on Slack, I'm just going to use exactly what they have here. And what's truly remarkable is that you have the ability to create an entire ChatGPT app using just under 10 lines of code. So let's take a look at what's going on here to understand exactly how using LangChain to build this works. So you need your OpenAI application. So we're going to be using that here. We're going to be using the GPT side of it, which is what basically returns the responses based on inputs or based on the prompt. We need a conversation chain, and this essentially handles the chatbot aspect of it, the fact that we're going to be maintaining a long conversation memory as well. So that is something that we need. And then we need a large language model chain because we're using OpenAI in this case, as well as a prompt template. A prompt template is where you define a prompt, because LangChain provides an interface for you to manage your prompt, so you can define a specific prompt and use that as a template moving forward. The next thing that we have here is memory, and memory is really important for any chatbot application because you need to hold information about the previous conversations and the chat history to allow the chatbot to have the context of whatever questions or whatever conversations are happening afterwards. And this is typically the hardest part when it comes to building a chatbot. And the guys at LangChain have really simplified it, that all you really need to do is import this particular module, and that handles everything about memory. So let's take a look at some of the things that are going on here. So first, you want to have a template. So you want to define your template. So this template basically is your prompt. And in your prompt, you have a piece of text in your prompt, and you also have some dynamic values in your prompt. So we have history here, which represents the conversation history, and we have the human input, which represents every input that your end users are going to be providing. So this is a bit of instruction, just making sure the assistant has all the information it actually needs to behave like the way ChatGPT actually behaves. So to initialize this, you want to start by creating your prompt. So you create your prompt template using the template, and the input variables, which I mentioned earlier on, are dynamic values, which you're going to be getting as conversations go along. And once you're done with that, you also need to create a chain. So we have here our large language model chain, and in there we have a few parameters. One, we're using OpenAI. We've set the temperature to 0. Temperature is 0 just simply because you want factual and accurate information. You don't want GPT to make up a lot of stuff. We're setting the prompt to the prompt we set earlier on, And then there is this setting for verbose, which is either true or false. And then finally, with this single line, you are storing all of the memory that is coming out, from your history right into memory. I still can't get over the idea of how easy LangChain has made building something like ChatGPT. It is truly special what they have done here. I cannot emphasize it enough. All right, so to use the app, all you need to do is just basically call this particular function here, just to say ChatGPT chain dot predict, using the method predict and passing the inputs that you want to pass, and anything you return as output is the information that you need. That's it. That's all you need. So all you really need to do is always call this particular function to return an output, and that output you can send back through Slack. So let's go into the code and see exactly how to bring all of this together. To get started, create a file called app.py in your directory. Now we're going to be importing a few modules. We need our OS module to access our environment tokens. We need the app from the Slackbot token, which is essentially going to be managing all our Slack operations. We also need to import socket mode handler from the socket mode adapter. And then on the LangChain side, we need to import OpenAI, conversation chain, LLM chain, as well as a prompt template. We're going to be using that in our function as we saw before. We're also importing the conversational buffer window memory to store the conversation history. Next, we need to initialize our Slack app. Now let's go ahead and add the functions that we need to get the app working. All right, so to build up our ChatGPT function, essentially all we need to do is just really copy the ChatGPT clone function that we got from LangChain, and that is what we have right here. I already went over it, so I'm not going to go over it again. Next up, we're going to be creating our message handling app for Slack. All right, so for our message handler, essentially we do have our app.message event listener. It listens for messages that has been sent directly to the bot. In this case, we're actually trying to handle any message at all, which is why we have the dot star sign there, which means that we're trying to get any message at all. Now, we also have a function there that essentially takes 3 parameters. The message parameter, which has the message information, including the text, the say, which is basically a bolt function that responds directly to the event, as well as a logger function just to log any output out on the console in case we need to do that. So all we really need to do very, very simply is to set our output to ChatGPT _ chain predict, which is basically the function that we're using to process the message. And once we receive the output, we're going to pass that output to our say function, which is going to send that message back to Slack. Now, you can also use things like chat post message or chat post ephemeral message, things of that nature. But I just wanted to really focus in on how easy it is here to build a ChatGPT app. So let's go ahead and hit our Python 3 app.py to get our app started and go test it out. For our test, we're going to do some code generation. So we're going to ask ChatGPT, can you provide a Python function that sums up to variables? Let's see what it does with this one and if it's able to return the code. All right, there we go. It returns the code. And just one thing to note is that to enhance this app much further, one of the ways would be to actually return the information and block it so that that code, for instance, would be in a code block, or also adding any other additional formatting that is going to make it look nice. I hope you really enjoyed what we did today, and looking forward to seeing what you build on your end. Thank you once more for watching Prompt Circle, and talk to you next time.